Hello, this video is going to be about DynamoDB. I made a website called myDynamoDB to practice with a DynamoDB database. I wanted to see if I could use it as an alternative to MongoDB. So a DynamoDB database is a non-SQL database that consists of tables. And the tables, here I am in my AWS console, have a table for my open source team, which is what I use for my DynamoDB. And basically, I have in that table, I have team ID, team data, and team name. Now in DynamoDB, you have what's called a primary key and a sort key. In this case, I just have a primary key called team ID. I don't have a sort key. You don't have to have a sort key. And then I just have my schema, which consists of team data and team name. Now the team data is a JSON string, and the team name is just simply a string. So in here, you see the data I currently have in my DynamoDB. If you don't know how to set up a table, I have another video that you can find in the About section that describes how to go from creating a table to actually interfacing with it with Lambda functions. And that's what this test table is for. The test table here actually does have a primary key and a sort key. Now in this case, I use a random number for the timestamp basically for the IDs, and then my sort keys, I don't really have any data in those right now. So my DynamoDB uses a non-SQL database, DynamoDB, and it actually is a good replacement, in my opinion, for MongoDB. Uh, and the reason I say that is that I could set up a similar project in MongoDB that I have in DynamoDB. And I found that it works pretty good. One of the things that's interesting about DynamoDB is that it's not particularly fast for writing records, but it's extremely fast for reading the records. So if you have an application where you don't actually have to have the user put a lot of data in, the user is actually consuming data. Let's say you have some website where you have all sorts of videos or something like that, that you actually want to just have the user be able to watch, not necessarily upload. It would be a good application for that. What happens in DynamoDB is that the writes are fairly slow, but the reads are very fast. Also, the writes cost you more than the reads. And what I mean by that is if we go ahead to an example database, I have here my project team called Jim's team for DynamoDB. Now in here, this is just my team menu, but let's go over to my table. And in my table, you can see the basic commands that I've implemented for DynamoDB. There's many commands, but I implemented scan, put, update, and delete, and get. Now you'll notice when we actually do some of these commands, you'll see what kind of capacity units are used. Now, consumed capacity units are basically the amount of throughput you get out of the database. So when I actually read this by saying get, you'll notice down here my capacity units are 1. But if I go up here and actually update this, which is simply writing to the database, you notice my consumed capacity is 8. So in this case, you can see that update, which is a write operation, is 8 times more expensive than the read operation. Keep this in mind while you're doing this, or using these databases. And it goes up pretty fast. I mean, I don't really have a lot of data here. It's just a JSON body. I'm not sure how much is here, but I had, 8 capacity units consumed when I did that. Let's go and pick a larger set of data. I have random developers in here, which is many more developers, you can see. And if I go back to my table and I look at the capacity units that were consumed, in the case of reading that, I had 2 capacity units consumed. But if I go ahead and write this table, you'll see that I've consumed 15 capacity units. So one case, what was I at? I was at 2 when I got it. Let's see, try again. And I had 15 when I got it. Let's see if puts anything else in there. 15 for put. Let's say we just create a unique ID. Let's see what scan will say we have. Let's pick an ID like 56, let's say, and just put it back and see if we get the same amount of capacity units for a put operation for a new thing, and it's 15. So it doesn't really matter whether it's a new record or whether you're updating the same item, it's the same amount of capacity units. Another interesting thing about DynamoDB is that the reads aren't instantaneous. They have strongly consistent reads and eventually consistent reads. If you're using a Lambda function like I am to actually read your database, I highly recommend against using strongly consistent reads. And the reason being is strongly consistent reads, when you do them, they take a lot of time, and you would be paying for that time with your Lambda function. Eventually consistent reads basically come back right away, and the data might be stale. So generally it's a good idea to wait a period of time, and it's a small period of time, a second or two, before you actually read what you updated in your table. Now, because updates are very expensive and DynamoDB is really about reading more than anything else, you really don't have to be concerned, in my opinion, about the eventually consistent reads. Now, I'll give you an example here. So if I go back to my table or my team and I actually save the team, you'll notice that I have a little message box that comes up that says I'm waiting for eventually consistent reads. And the reason I'm doing that is actually when I write my table, I actually read it back to make sure that the data is updated. If I get updates, I don't see that message because I haven't done any reads. If I actually copy this team and create a new team, it's going to wait a little longer for eventually consistent reads because I'm doing a put operation as well as read. And you can see that the copy showed up kind of later, and that was because of the delay that I created my program to make sure that the data wasn't stale. The last part of my video will basically be to show you how to use a social media app. It's a very simple app. It's probably not that useful, but what I've done is I've created a way to basically search GitHub for various users on GitHub for a particular collaborative project you might want to do. So in this case, I have people that I search for in DynamoDB. In my search bar, when I went to find developers, I typed in DynamoDB, and I found these developers that had DynamoDB in their profiles. So if you go and you click more info on the profiles, you'll see a description of the user as well as their recent repos. Okay. Now, this person doesn't have an email address, so they're not somebody that I would want to collaborate with, at least not using this tool, this social media tool, because I have no email address to reach them. But these others do have email addresses, as you can see here. And if you want to go to their GitHub profiles, you can just click the link, and it'll take you to GitHub, and you'll be able to see more detail about their repos and things like that. Also, you can click on their website if they happen to have a website, and you can read about them on their website. So I think this is kind of a fun app that kind of shows you how to consume data on GitHub, as well as store your findings in a Dynamo database. So here I have another feature. So we can copy the teams, we can create a new team, we can save, we can get updates. So let's say somebody's on this at the same time you are. You can get updates if they changed it. It isn't really coordinated. I don't have that feature in it. Scan teams, if somebody adds a new team, you can scan them. When you load this page, it automatically scans them, but if you want to scan them here on this page, you can. So once you have your team selected, you can press compose email. And basically what comes up is the email addresses in the to bar, and then you can just write some subject like let's make something great together. And then you can write a message. Hi, my name is Jim. I have some idea about an open source project, etc. Now this actually uses the mail to function in the browser. So when you actually click, if you have a mail client that's already set up, it will automatically open that. Or if you are using Gmail, which I am here, it'll open your Gmail account. If you set that up in Chrome, it'll open up your Gmail account where you can actually send your email. So I'm not actually sending the email for you. It's just opening your client so that you send it from you. So you can actually play around with it if you want. And I'm on a slow computer here, so it's taking forever. Anyway, so you can see that I actually have my email here. And I spelled things kind of wrong, but that's okay. So at this point, you could just send it, and it would send using your Gmail or whatever different email clients you have set up. If you have an email set up on your computer, it would open it. Like let's say Outlook, it would open Outlook with this data in there. This entire project is on my GitHub account. And there's also some descriptions under the About menu about how I did this. I have some links to actually a tutorial where I started a React app and modified it considerably. You can find that at Udemy. I also have a blog post at mysoftwarejourney.com where I describe how I set up the Lambda functions, how I set up the API gateway, etc. It uses a different project called the test project, which actually has less data in it. It's a little more simple, but it basically goes through all the steps that you need to do to set all this up, including cores. I also have a description here about the API that I used, some of the headers that I had to change with the standard boilerplate from AWS in order to get cores to work properly. I also have a short description here, which you can find also on AWS, about how to set up a DynamoDB locally. That way you don't actually have to you don't have to pay for anything because they have a local version that you can use and you can explore the database in greater detail. All this stuff is actually at my DynamoDB demo repository at my GitHub account. And I have a similar description that I have in the README file that kind of goes through details about how all that's done. So I'm really had a lot of fun making this project, and I think there wasn't a lot of information out there on how to hook up to DynamoDB, and I'm hoping that my project might help people out. Please give me some comments about how you like the project, what you would do to improve it. It would be welcome. Thank you.